What's up, everybody? I'm Stan, and welcome to Detail Comics, where we go over comics in detail. This is iRate Reviews, the show where I go over a comic book, its art, its story, give you my impressions, and let you know whether it's something to go back to the comic book shop for or not. What I'm going to be talking about right now is Action Comics 971. So Action Comics 971 continues the story of the Men of Steel story arc, which this really originally started out as some sort of conflict story, but really it's about the unification of Superman and Lex Luthor under the banner of Superman himself. When we jump into issue 971, we see Lois Lane and Jonathan Jonathan White at this point in time. They are headed into Lois's New York apartment. And so it's not the Lois, it's the Lois from the New 52 universe, not this pre-Flashpoint Lois that we've come to know and really love in this point. So what she's doing is she's going back to her apartment in order to do some necessary research for things that she's working on. But she can't really leave John at home alone, so what she does is just brings him here. And that's where we kind of leave things off. There's a lot of unanswered questions that go along with this kind of setting based around where Lois's apartment is, because a lot of this property is the previous Lois's, and the differences between the universes haven't really been explained at that point in time. Then once we get from there, we actually dive into this faraway planet where we've got Superman and Lex Luthor, and this is really a narration by Lex Luthor talking about the current situation. So he is currently in the grasps of Superman, who is basically accusing him of being a villain because that is what he knows him as. He doesn't understand this New 52 Luthor and how he's kind of gone through these different trials and things like that. So what Luthor's doing is basically assessing the situation. Superman's trying to kill him, and then you've got these other people, like you've got L'Call, you've got Zane, you've got the Seer, you've got these desperate people from these worlds that have been destroyed, and then the understanding that everybody's going on these visions of the future that call Lex Luthor a mass murderer, taking over the seat of Darkseid on Apocalypse, and that's really what's kind of biting him. And Superman is clearly going along with this. He's just like, yeah, so no, you're terrible, we're gonna have to take care of these kind of things. And L'Call hands him a blade as if he's going to be the executioner himself, and he starts going down to just like, as for what I know about you, you're evil, blah blah blah. And what we really get is to the point where we find out immediately that Superman is part of a ruse as he snaps the sword in two, basically shattering it and allowing nobody to really execute Luthor at this point in time. And immediately the wheels click in Lex Luthor's brain. It's just like, oh, he was playing along, he's a really smart plan, all these kind of things, and then the strategy kind of breaks out. So what Superman goes, he reclaims the mother box, he hands it over to Luthor. Luthor's going to create a boom tube so that way they can escape. And as they dive into this open portal, L'Call basically shoots a bolt of energy, disrupting and kind of redirecting where the boom tube is going to be going. And this is something that Superman and Lex Luthor aren't necessarily aware of at this point in time. However, Zane has, really noticed that L'Call's got a plan in that respect. So what we find that Lex Luthor and Superman are now marooned on an alien planet that they're not necessarily aware of where they're at. And the big problem we can see in the background is that this is a red sun planet. And Superman explains as much inside the story itself. It's just like, hey man, I don't have much solar energy. It only really works on yellow suns. Doesn't really work on red suns. I'm going to be pretty much powerless here in a little bit. And that just pisses Lex Luthor off. He's just like, I am marooned on an alien planet with you? And he's just, the level of frustration kind of goes about and just pops his top. So they start in this kind of conflict mode where Lex Luthor is just like, you're the person that ransacked my office. They went through all these things. I thought it was corporate espionage, but it was you. And Superman's like, yeah, I investigated the crap out of you, man. It's like, you are a dangerous villain from where I came from, so obviously I took the measures in order to do those kind of things. And next thing you know, it's just all them just kind of being blown up because Zane and L'Call are there. They're there to seek this kind of vengeance on these two people, execute Lex Luthor, and now, because Superman is an accessory to the crime, involve him as well. And what we get is a very serious turn of events, because I kind of glossed over the fact that Lex Luthor explained the forever evil thing, where he actually turned into a good guy, started working with the Justice League. But he is having this moment of realization at this point in time that in this situation, Superman is the person that's going to be as defenseless sooner than Lex Luthor is. So he's taking up the role of protector, even though Superman just clearly accused him of being, under some sort of plan. He's got some sort of ruse, or he's got some sort of, alternative measures that are going to go on. He is going to take over the mantle of protector and protect this person that obviously doesn't trust him. So it's kind of a duality, because Superman went to rescue Lex Luthor, even though he clearly didn't have to. But Lex Luthor is going to rescue Superman, even though he clearly doesn't have to. So it's this great duality that's being played at. At that point in time, we bounce back to Metropolis, where Lois is going over these kind of things. Jonathan reveals that they've actually been to the Geneticron building. He knows where it is. It's in the Amazon. She's about to go through like the satellite footage and stuff like that to see if she can find it. And because they haven't really had an opportunity to go out and get dinner, she's ordered in Chinese. So Jonathan goes over to get the delivery. And who do we see here? A mild-mannered news reporter that seems to be super creepy. Yeah, I'm saying that because Clark Kent, because he randomly shows up at Lois Lane's apartment when they have no relationship whatsoever, is, doing his investigative best to figure out exactly what's going on with this situation, but it is super duper creepy, and it just says really bad stuff about this version of Clark Kent. Like this particular Clark Kent, obviously, it feels obvious, is that he is not who he says he is. He has some sort of ulterior motives, and that's really where we're taking this story. Dan Jurgens is doing a really good job of kind of relaying this whole situation, and it's going to be setting up the Superman Reborn story, which is going to be coming up in March. So I'm really excited to see how this kind of plays, because he's planting the seeds for Clark Kent's personality and how things are going to be impacting that remaining story in the March timeframe right now. So he's starting to kind of cultivate those things, and I really like that. As far as the art's concerned in this book, the art was kind of a hit or miss section for me. Segovia's art isn't bad, and there are some situations where it's actually pretty good, but there are moments where the faces just seem a little funky. The line work just doesn't seem quite as even. It's just good at best in the situation, but it's not necessarily what I would consider like excellent standout performing art. But it's not enough to really distract me from the overall scheme of the comic book itself. Overall, I'd say that Action Comics is continuing to be one of the better Superman books. Not necessarily the best, because Superman tends to take the cake in that respect, but it is definitely not something that you would be disappointed in as a Superman fan. Highly recommended for me, so go grab 971, but if you haven't had a chance to read the arc yet, start at the first issue of the Men of Steel arc. That's going to be your best bet. So that's my review of Action Comics 971, but I want to know what you guys thought too, so hit me up in the comments down below, and we can start that conversation. As always, if you like what you see, hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe right there to get more news, reviews, and commentary on comic books, comic book movies, comic book TV shows and games, and anything and everything inside the world of comics.